Recently, at one of his rallies, President Donald Trump said that his speeches would be remembered by historians as being as good as Abraham Lincoln's. I'll leave that judgment to the historians, but that comment got me thinking again at how good Abraham Lincoln was as both a writer and a speaker. In this video, I'm going to read to you from 3 of Abraham Lincoln's condolence letters. These are the only 3 condolence letters I could find in his collected papers, and they're beautiful examples of how to write a condolence letter. Hi everybody, this is Bruce Lambert from HowCommunicationWorks.com. This is a channel where I teach you about communication skills so you can improve your relationships, succeed at work, and be more confident. So Lincoln's collected papers contain only 3 condolence letters. Each of them is beautifully written and contain many examples for us about how to write a great condolence letter. One of these letters, to a mother of 5 children who died in the Civil War, which was the basis for the movie Saving Private Ryan, is probably the most famous condolence letter ever written, certainly the most famous condolence letter that Lincoln ever wrote, and we'll talk about that third. So let's get started by reading each of these condolence letters. I'll put them up on the screen, I'll comment on them, and then we'll try to extract some general lessons about how to write a beautiful condolence letter and in general how to comfort people who are in distress. Let's get started. The first letter is to the parents of a Col Ellsworth, who is a colonel that Lincoln knew personally before the Civil War and who died very early in the Civil War in 1861, and who he was personally bereft about because it was a friend, not just some anonymous soldier whose parents Lincoln was writing to. So let's get into this letter right now. I'll put it up on the screen. It says, to the father and mother of Col Elmer Ellsworth, my dear sir and madam, in the untimely loss of your noble son, our affliction here is scarcely less than your own. So here's one general lesson is talk about how deeply grieved you are by the loss. This is one of the first things you say in a condolence letters. How did it affect you? So our affliction is scarcely less than your own. So much of promised usefulness to one's country and of bright hopes for oneself and friends have never been so suddenly dashed as in his fall. So here the general lesson is praise that which has been lost, or praise he or she who has been lost. So in this case, there's a long section of this letter that praises the virtues of Col Ellsworth, and it begins with saying, never before someone with such bright hopes for the future been dashed so suddenly. In size, in years, and in youthful appearance, a boy only. His power to command men was surpassingly great. So he's praising his command talents. This power, combined with fine intellectual and indomitable energy and a taste altogether military, constituted in him, as it seemed to me, the best natural talent in that department I ever knew. Just heaping praise upon him as a soldier and as a commander. And yet he was singularly modest and deferential in social intercourse. So not only was he a spectacular leader, he was humble and modest. My acquaintance with him began less than 2 years ago, yet through the latter half of the intervening period, it was as intense as the disparity of our ages and my engrossing engagements would permit. So he's basically saying we were very good friends, even though I was very busy. To me, he appeared to have no indulgences or pastimes, and I never heard him utter a profane or intemperate word. More praise. What was conclusive of his good heart, he never forgot his parents. So he's writing to his parents and saying, he was a good boy and he never forgot his parents. The honors he labored for so laudably and for which, in the sad end, he so gallantly gave his life, he meant for them no less than for himself, meaning he tried to honor his parents by his military service. In the hope that it may be no intrusion upon the sacredness of your sorrow. Now, here it just gets so beautiful. The final words of these letters are so beautiful, they almost bring tears to my eyes. In the hope that it may be no intrusion upon the sacredness of your sorrow. So he's acknowledging the depth of loss of the family, and he's saying, although I want to offer my condolences, I don't want to intrude upon the sacredness of your mourning. I have ventured to address this to you. I have ventured to address you this tribute to the memory of my young friend and your brave and early fallen son. May God give you the consolation which is beyond all earthly power. There's a spelling error there. Sincerely, your friend in common affliction, A. Lincoln. So there's a beautiful sort of blessing at the end. May God give you the consolation which is beyond all earthly power. So another lesson for condolence letters is acknowledge the limits of language. language, no set of words. If you've ever been mourning for someone who you loved very much, you know that no words can actually take away the pain of the loss. They can comfort us somewhat. And so in this letter and in your letters, you should acknowledge the limited power of language to actually soothe people's suffering when they lose someone that they love. Sincerely, your friend in common affliction, A. Lincoln. So that's a beautiful letter. And we extract from it a few general lessons. Acknowledge your own loss, praise that which has been lost, acknowledge the limits of language. And in this case, he offers a sort of blessing or consecration. Let's go to the second letter. This letter he writes to the daughter of a family friend. And this is an unusual letter because normally in consolation letters and in comforting generally, the advice is don't tell people how to feel. But here, and also the advice is don't tell people to cheer up. If you've ever been really sad and someone tells you to cheer up, you just want to hit them. So in this case, though, Lincoln is so talented, he sort of breaks that rule. And in some way, he tells this person to cheer up, or at least he says, there will be better days, which is a dangerous thing to say. And unless you're as artful as Lincoln, I'd be cautious about telling people they'll feel better eventually. I think most people want to be acknowledged where they're at in their sorrow. So I'll put this one up and let's give it a read. Dear Fanny, it is with deep regret that I learn of the death of your kind and brave father, and especially that it is affecting your young heart beyond what is common in such cases. So again, most condolence letters should begin with an acknowledgement of the loss and an acknowledgement of how deeply the loss has affected the person writing the letter. So with deep regret, I learned the death of your father, and especially that it is affecting your young heart beyond what is common in such cases. In this sad world of ours, sorrow comes to all. And to the young, it comes with bitter agony because it takes them unawares. So here's classic empathy, acknowledging the perspective of the other person. So Fanny is a young woman. She hasn't experienced much death. By this time in Lincoln's life, he had experienced a lot of death of his parents, of I think at least one of his children by this time, of close friends, of family, of many people in the war. So he had experienced a great deal of death and not become inured to it, but he knew that sorrow was a central aspect of life, especially in those days when so many people died young. So you acknowledge the feelings of the other person. The older have learned ever to expect it. I am anxious to afford alleviation of your present distress. Perfect relief is not possible except with time. So one of the things, if you go back to my comforting video, which I'll put up here, I said, tell people that you want to help. One of the most comforting things you could do people is just tell them that you want to help. So here he says, I am anxious to afford alleviation of your present distress. I want to help you. Perfect relief is not possible except with time. So he's acknowledging, again, the limits of language. No relief from this suffering can come except with time. You cannot now realize that you will ever feel better. This is empathy again. He's projecting and he's imagining how she feels, that she feels at this moment that she'll never feel better. So Lincoln is acknowledging that. You cannot now realize that you will ever feel better. Is it not so? And yet it is a mistake. So here he gets into this sort of dangerous territory that most people other than Lincoln shouldn't do. He's now telling her that what she's thinking is wrong. And yet it is a mistake. You are sure to be happy again. To know this, which is certainly true, will make you some less miserable now. He's trying to say, if you realize you're going to be happy in the future, you'll be a little bit less miserable now. I have had experience enough to know what I say, and you need only to believe it to feel better at once. So he's telling her how to feel, which really goes against all advice about comforting. He's telling her, you should recognize that someday you will feel better. And that fact alone, recognizing that this will not last forever, will lighten your spirits. The memory of your dear father, instead of an agony, will yet be sad, will yet be a sad, sweet feeling in your heart of a purer and holier sort than you have known before. So he's telling her when the agony of the current sadness ends, the memory of her father will be a sad, sweet thing, which is precious in its own way. She's trying to tell her how the mourning will evolve. And this is great advice from an older person to a younger person who may not have ever mourned anyone before and might think that the unbearable agony of the immediate aftermath of the loss lasts forever. But he's trying to tell her what it's going to be like. Please present my kind regards to your afflicted mother, your sincere friend, A. Lincoln. So sort of typical closing, condolences to the other members of the family, and goodbye. So that's Lincoln's second condolence letter. Beautiful in very many ways, more generalized lessons, and also some dangerous territory to go into where he tells her how not to feel and how she should be feeling. If you think you can get away with it, go for it. Most of us are not Lincoln, though, and it's tricky territory to go to. So let's go for the third letter, which I will put up on the screen now. The next letter is Abraham Lincoln's famous letter to Mrs. Bixby. This is the letter that the movie Saving Private Ryan was based on. If you remember the first scene in Saving Private Ryan, one soldier brings a letter to another soldier, and then the action of the movie starts. And that letter talks about one parent who's lost several children in the war, and then the mission of Saving Private Ryan is to go save the remaining child. Well, the actual letter to Mrs. Bixby that the movie is based on, all 5 children died in the Civil War. If you can imagine how horrible this was for the mother. And this is Lincoln, having learned that this mother lost all 5 of her children in the Civil War, attempts to write her a condolence letter. Sort of the most difficult situation imaginable, and Abraham Lincoln writes probably the most famous condolence letter in the English language. So let's give it a read. I'll put it up on the screen now. 5-star mother to Mrs. Bixby, Executive Mansion, Washington, November 21st, 1864. Mrs. Bixby, dear Madam, I have been shown in the files of the War Department a statement of the Adjutant General of Massachusetts that you are the mother of 5 sons who have died gloriously on the field of battle. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. Oh, it's so beautiful. So first he just says, I got the letter. And he talks about how they died gloriously on the battle. So at the beginning of every condolence letter, you just have to acknowledge the loss that you're writing about, and he does that. And then he talks about the limits of language. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. Oh, that phrase, to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. It's just so beautiful. I think no one in English, other than Shakespeare and maybe Mark Twain, wrote as beautifully as Lincoln did in English. But I cannot refrain from tendering to you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the Republic they died to serve. So here he says he has to offer his condolences, and he does so on behalf of the whole country. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. So this is a beautiful, beautiful sentence also. So he says, I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement. This is a kind of a blessing, which is often offered in a condolence letter. If you're religious at all, you'll often offer some sort of blessing. And leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost. So we talk about what's remaining to us after we've suffered this loss. Often what's remaining to us is the memory of people. It says, and the solemn pride, because this woman lost all 4 of her children in battle for what was thought to be a just cause. The solemn pride that must be yours to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. And again, just the phrasing is so poetic, is so beautiful. I wonder, this letter was widely reprinted at the time, and I'll search for, and maybe talk about it in another video, how Mrs. Bixby reacted. Maybe her public reaction is documented in contemporaneous news reports. But it's an absolutely spectacular letter. I think I counted there's only 5 sentences in this letter. It's the most beautiful condolence letter ever written in English, I think, certainly by an American, and it's only 5 sentences long. So a condolence letter doesn't need to be long. It hits all the major elements of any condolence letter. Let's review the 5 sentences again. The first sentence is just an acknowledgement of the loss. The second sentence acknowledges the limits of language. The third sentence offers condolences or consolation. The fourth sentence is a long sentence which does multiple things. It offers a blessing, and it asks the grieving person to be comforted by their memories and their pride in the sacrifice that they've made. And then the final sentence just is a closing. So there you have it. 3 condolence letters by Abe Lincoln, which show us his power with language and his beautiful phrasing and his just absolute mastery of every occasion, in this case, the occasion of someone's death. I hope you can learn something from these 3 letters. There's a kind of formula that you see used in these letters that you could follow in your own condolence letters. And I find that writing these kinds of condolence letters can make a big impact on people who are grieving, and they'll be remembered for a long time. If you like this kind of video, go on over to howcommunicationworks.com and check out our website, sign up for the ebook and our mailing list. Also, if you like this video, please give the video a like, subscribe to our channel, and click that bell icon to get notified every time we post a new video. Go on down to the comments and give me examples of condolence letters, good or bad, that you've received. I think the comments help us build a community where we can learn from one another about how communication works and what kinds of communication skills are most interesting to you. Thanks so much for spending a few minutes with me and with Abe Lincoln. We'll see you next time.